Okay, let's unpack this. Think about it. So much of global commerce, the movement of goods, the flow of payments, still relies on systems that feel, well, they feel like they're from a different era.
Absolutely. We're talking about business-to-business data exchange
Yeah.
specifically.
Right, where vital information is often swapped using technology that hasn't really fundamentally changed in decades. It's this fascinating challenge. You've got the need for modern, real-time speed bumping up against these deeply embedded legacy systems.
Exactly. Because even though everyone's expectations are shifting towards, instant updates like seeing your order status right on your phone or knowing inventory levels in real time, a huge slice of global trade still runs on electronic data interchange.
EDI.
EDI, yeah. And these systems, they're incredibly reliable, right? They're often mandated by regulations or big trading partners.
And they contain decades of accumulated business logic. You can't just flip a switch and turn them off. It's just not that simple. No way. The idea of ripping out these complex, critical EDI engines is just, well, it's not practical for most organizations, is it?
Not at all. The compliance side, the vast networks of partners who still rely purely on EDI, all that specific business logic built up over years.
It's too deeply woven into the fabric of how businesses operate.
Right. But like you said, the demand for more agile, faster interactions using modern things like APIs is only growing.
So that's the core tension. How do you bridge that gap? How do you actually get the best of both worlds?
And that's really what this deep dive is all about. How do you embrace the agility and, frankly, the speed of these API-driven ecosystems without causing chaos, without dismantling your existing stable EDI foundation?
There's a path, though. The source we're digging into today lays out a really smart, pragmatic, phased approach.
Yes, it does. It's an article by David Heath titled From Legacy EDI to API-First Ecosystems, a Phased Modernization Path.
And what really caught my eye is how his strategy uses AI, artificial intelligence, to actually speed up the process.
Yeah, that's a key element. It's a blueprint for, let's say, evolution, not revolution.
Okay, so our mission today is to walk through this path step by step, understand how organizations can get that responsiveness APIs offer.
While keeping the stability and just the sheer reach of their existing EDI infrastructure. It's about coexistence,
Yeah.
gradual transformation.
Right. So where do we start? The article makes it clear we have to begin by just acknowledging the reality on the ground. EDI isn't vanishing overnight.
Absolutely not. It's still the backbone. It handles the bulk of global supply chain data traffic. Think about those really fundamental transactions: purchase orders, invoices, shipping notices.
Especially between major companies.
Overwhelmingly, yes.
Yeah.
Still transmitted using standard EDI formats, things like X12 in North America or Edifact internationally.
And it's not just because we've always done it this way, right? There are solid business and technical reasons it's still here.
Oh, definitely. Compliance is massive.
Yeah.
Many industries, specific trading relationships, they require certain EDI standards for regulatory reasons, for audit trails. Then there's just the scale of the partner networks. Getting everyone, literally everyone, to switch off EDI at the same time. It's just not feasible.
Too many moving parts.
And yeah, all that accumulated specific business logic, often it's baked right into the EDI mapping and translation layers. Trying to extract that, rebuild it somewhere else.
Yeah.
That's a monumental task.
Okay, so you've got this deeply entrenched, very reliable system, but it's built for batch processing, files exchanged periodically.
Right, and that clashes with the modern expectation for real-time interaction. Buyers want to know now if an order shipped, not wait for tomorrow morning's batch report.
That's the core tension this phased approach, the one David Heath outlines, aims to resolve.
Exactly. The core idea isn't replacement, not wholesale replacement anyway. It's about building on it and building alongside it, a carefully staged program.
So EDI and APIs are meant to coexist, maybe for quite a while.
Potentially for a long time, yes.
Yeah.
Evolving together.
And the key accelerator here, according to the article, is AI. How does AI actually make this daunting task more manageable?
AI really helps speed up the most labor-intensive parts. And we're not talking science fiction here. This is happening now. AI is being used for tasks like understanding these complex existing systems,
Okay.
automatically translating data between formats, generating new code artifacts like API definitions, and even helping manage the increased complexity of running these hybrid systems day to day.
Okay, so where does this phased approach actually begin? What's the crucial first step, according to Heath?
Phase one is all about establishing what the article calls a living integration inventory. And that word living is really important.
A complete map of everything you have, basically. but one that stays up to date.
Exactly. A fact-based map. This is often where companies get stuck. Their documentation is old, or the real knowledge is just in the heads of a few key people.
That classic tribal knowledge.
Right. So you need to catalog everything, every single EDI document type you use, like an 850 purchase order, an 810 invoice, every trading partner connection, any value-added networks, those vans you use for exchanging EDI.
Those specialized networks.
Yeah. And critically, every back-end system your EDI flows actually touch. Your ERP, your warehouse management system, finance systems, whatever they are.
That sounds incredibly time-consuming if you're doing it the old way, digging through files, interviewing people.
It was. Traditionally, very painful. But the article highlights how modern observability tools are a real game changer here.
How so?
Well, they can passively monitor the actual EDI message traffic flowing through your system in real time and automatically generate dependency graphs, visual maps of what connects to what.
So you get a factual current picture of what's really happening, not what someone thinks is happening based on some diagram from 5 years ago.
Exactly. It bypasses the guesswork and the outdated docs.
So the key takeaway for phase one is you absolutely must have a solid, data-driven understanding of your current EDI world before you can even think about modernizing it effectively. It gives you that essential baseline.
Precisely. Without that factual inventory, you're flying blind. With it, you can start making intelligent, data-driven decisions.
Like deciding which specific EDI flows or partners offer the quickest wins if you expose them as APIs.
Exactly. You know where to focus your energy first for the biggest impact, the fastest value.
Got it. Know your starting point based on facts. Makes sense. What's phase two then?
Phase 2 is about getting some quick value on the board, wrapping critical EDI flows with lightweight API facades.
API facades, I like that term. The article uses an analogy, right? Like putting a modern front on an old building but without gutting the inside.
That's a great way to put it. It's often the fastest, lowest risk way to start getting the benefits of modern APIs for certain interactions. Crucially, without having to change your stable, often complex, EDI translator software at all.
So how does that work technically? You put something in front?
The technique is pretty straightforward conceptually. You place an API gateway in front of your existing EDI system.
Okay, so this gateway sits there. A partner calls an API on the gateway. What happens next?
So from the outside, the gateway offers standard modern API endpoints. Your partners or internal apps can call them using familiar protocols like REST or maybe GraphQL.
Right.
But on the inside, the gateway takes that API call, translates it into the traditional EDI payload, the X12 or IDIFACT file format, and simply passes it along to your existing EDI translator.
So the translator just processes it like it always has. It doesn't even know an API was involved at the start.
Essentially, yes. And the beauty is, if a partner is ready for APIs, they can hit that new gateway endpoint directly.
But if they're not ready, if they still need to send EDI files the old way.
They can continue doing that.
Yeah.
The EDI translator handles it as usual. Or maybe the gateway can even be configured to receive those files too, or interact with the van. It allows for that coexistence.
Right. Partners who are ready get the modern interface. Those who aren't can carry on as usual, uninterrupted.
Exactly. It's sometimes called the strangler fig pattern. You build the new system around the old one,
Gradually directing traffic to the new layer.
until the old one perhaps becomes less critical over time. Or maybe it just continues to handle certain flows.
That makes so much sense. And the huge benefit here, it sounds like, is you avoid the massive risk and cost of trying to rewrite that core EDI mapping logic or building complex parallel systems to handle both APIs and EDI natively.
You got it. You're just adding a thin modern layer on top.
Mm-hmm.
It demonstrates real API value to the business and to your partners quickly with minimal disruption to that core legacy system. It's a very pragmatic win.
Okay, super practical. So you've mapped your landscape, you've put these API layers, these facades on the critical flows. Now, phase 3 seems to be where AI really starts to accelerate the creation of these new interfaces. It talks about letting generative AI create canonical API contracts. What's that about?
Right, this shifts the focus a bit. It's less about just exposing existing flows as is, and more about accelerating the design and the definition of truly modern, well-structured interfaces. Once you have that deep understanding of your EDI traffic patterns and the data models hidden inside those messages, which you got from phase 1, remember, generative AI becomes incredibly powerful.
Powerful how? What can it do?
It can automatically extract the necessary definitions to create modern API blueprints directly from your existing EDI implementation guides, your maps, and even sample transaction data.
So generating things like open API specifications, those standard blueprints for REST APIs.
Exactly. OpenAPI for request response APIs or async API specifications for the event-driven ones we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
These files act as the official contract describing exactly how to use the API, what data to expect.
So instead of a person painstakingly figuring out how, say, an old EDI segment maps to a new JSON field in an API,
Hmm.
the AI does that mapping.
Precisely, or at least it does the first pass, the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
Vendors are embedding large language models, LLMs, directly into their integration tooling now.
Mm-hmm.
These LLMs can essentially watch sample transactions, analyze the EDI structures and relationships, and based on that, automatically generate the scaffolding for your API endpoints. They can define the data classes, maybe even produce basic test stubs.
Wow. That must save an enormous amount of time. What used to take, I imagine, weeks of detailed analysis and manual mapping.
Can potentially be roughed out in minutes now.
Yeah.
It's a huge acceleration. The article gives specific examples. AWS BDB data interchange, for instance, recently added this capability, automating the creation of those bidirectional mappings between EDI structures and API definitions.
Okay.
And another one mentioned is Eridani, a managed service provider. They're apparently developing a service expected around May 2025 that uses LLMs trained specifically to replicate the judgment of experienced integration specialists, the people who've spent careers doing this kind of complex mapping manually.
That's incredible. A huge productivity leap in that crucial design phase. Okay, so AI helps you design these APIs much, much faster. But the article points out in phase 4 that just having request response APIs, where you ask a question and get an answer, is really only half the story for truly modern processes. You need something more dynamic.
Exactly. You need an event-driven backbone.
Event-driven. What does that mean in this context?
Well, request response APIs are great for pulling information. Like, what is the status of Order 123? You ask, you get an answer.
Right.
But modern applications, and increasingly trading partners too, often need to be notified proactively when something important happens. They need to know, hey, Order 123 just shipped, without having to constantly pull or ask.
They need a push, not just a pull.
Precisely. They need real-time push capabilities.
Yeah.
And traditional EDI, being file-based and often processed in batches, just isn't built for that kind of instant notification.
Okay, so how do you introduce that?
Phase 4 is about introducing an event-driven layer. This is usually achieved by having the API gateway, or maybe a component sitting just behind it, emit events whenever a significant change occurs during the EDI processing.
Emit events. Where do they go?
These events are sent to a message broker system. Think of it like a central communication hub, or maybe a digital nervous system for data flows. Common examples are systems like Kafka, NATS, or MQTT brokers.
Okay, so the EDI system processes something.
Right. Let's say an 856 ship notice comes in and gets processed by the translator. The gateway, or listener service, detects that significant event. It extracts the key information, order number, tracking info, etc., and publishes an event message to the broker saying, essentially, shipment notification for order 123 processed, here's the data.
And then other systems, or maybe even partners who care about shipment updates for that order, they can subscribe to that specific event topic on the broker.
Exactly. They subscribe to the events they're interested in, and they get notified almost instantly when that event occurs.
So every key status change, every process document inside that seemingly batch-oriented EDI system can trigger an asynchronous, real-time notification downstream.
That's the goal. And just like OpenAPI provides a standard way to describe request response APIs, there's a parallel standard called Async API.
Ah, for the event streams.
Yes, Async API provides that same level of contract discipline. It defines the channels, the event types, the data payloads, ensuring everyone understands the structure and meaning of the event data they're subscribing to or publishing. It brings order to the event chaos.
That feels like a major shift, turning this batch process into a source of real-time signals. Okay, what's next? Phase 5 brings in more AI, but this time focused on the messier operational side, automating document conversion and handling exception.
Right. AI's role isn't just upfront in design. It's hugely valuable for improving the day-to-day operations, especially when dealing with, let's say, less than perfect inputs.
You mean partners who don't send clean EDI?
Exactly. Not every trading partner can or wants to send perfect, structured EDI files. Some still rely on sending crucial documents like purchase orders, invoices, maybe shipping instructions in unstructured formats. Think PDFs, emails, maybe even faxes still in some corners.
Ugh, the dreaded PDF purchase order arriving by email. I know companies where people spend all day just manually rekeying those.
It's a huge productivity drain. And incredibly error-prone, right?
Absolutely.
So this is where AI comes in again. Services like IBM Sterling Document Conversion, for example, use AI models,
Mm.
often trained using platforms like their Watson AI, to intelligently classify these incoming unstructured documents.
So it recognizes this is an invoice, this is a PO.
Yes, and then it goes further. It automatically extracts the relevant data fields from within that PDF or email body, the PO number, the line items, the quantities, the addresses, and converts it into a structured format that your backend systems can actually process, like EDI or maybe JSON.
Wow, that must drastically speed up onboarding those smaller or maybe less technically sophisticated partners who just can't manage EDI.
It absolutely does. It can shrink onboarding times for those non-EDI partners from potentially weeks of manual setup or ongoing data entry down to minutes or hours. And crucially, it eliminates that painful, error-prone swivel chair process.
Reading off one screen, typing into another. Yeah.
AI handles the heavy lifting of that data extraction and formatting, making those partners easier to do business with.
And the article says AI helps with exceptions, too, because even with
Right.
perfect EDI, things still go wrong sometimes, right? Data errors, mismatches.
For sure, things break. So machine learning classifiers can analyze failed messages or data validation errors. Based on the type of error or the specific partner involved, it can automatically route that exception to the correct analyst or support team.
So it gets to the right person faster.
Yes. And potentially even better, by analyzing historical data how similar exceptions were fixed in the past, the AI system might be able to recommend potential fixes or next steps to the analyst. It guides them towards a faster resolution. It helps manage the sheer volume and complexity of exceptions you inevitably get in a high-volume B2B environment.
Okay, so AI is helping clean up the input data and streamline the handling of problems. Makes sense. What's phase 6 about?
Phase 6 is where you start to see some of the potential cost savings from this modernization effort, incrementally retiring those old point-to-point van links.
Ah, the value-added networks. So the idea is as more partners start using the new API endpoints or getting data via the event backbone.
Their reliance on those traditional, often expensive, dedicated van connections should decrease over time.
Exactly. Remember phase 1, the inventory, a living inventory.
Keep monitoring the traffic.
By continuously watching the actual traffic patterns, you can identify which specific van connections are carrying less and less volume because the interactions have shifted to the newer API and event interfaces. And once usage drops below a certain threshold, or maybe for certain partners who have fully migrated, you can start turning those links off.
You can. The article suggests decommissioning them strategically, perhaps in clusters. This allows for a phased reduction of those legacy connections.
And that frees up budget, right? Van fees can be significant.
They certainly can. So you free up budget that was previously tied up in van subscriptions or maintaining those specific links, and that freed up money can then be reinvested into further automation or developing more API capabilities or improving the event infrastructure.
And doing it this way, incrementally based on data, is obviously much less risky than just deciding to shut down all your van connections at once.
Oh, massively less risky.
Yeah.
A big bang cutover of all your EDI links. That would put critical SLAs, compliance metrics, everything at huge risk, not to mention the immense change management shock for partners.
Yeah, sounds like a nightmare.
Phasing it out based on demonstrable shifts in actual traffic keeps the core system stable, keeps the business running, and makes the transition much smoother for everyone involved. It's strategic decommissioning guided by data.
Smart. Data-driven retirement of old links. Okay, what's the final phase David Heath lays out? Phase 7. Govern for the long term.
This is absolutely critical because becoming API first, even in this hybrid model, isn't just a one-off technology project. It's a fundamental shift to an ongoing operational model.
What does that mean in practice?
It means you need to start treating every interface you expose, whether it's a synchronous request response API or one of those asynchronous event streams, as a managed product. It has its own life cycle.
Treating APIs and event streams like products,
Mhm.
what does that actually involve day to day?
It means applying rigorous governance policies throughout their entire existence. Things like careful versioning, so you can update an API without breaking things for partners still using an older version.
Right. That's crucial.
Consistent security scanning and vulnerability management, synthetic monitoring where you have automated tests, constantly checking that your APIs and event streams are actually up and responding correctly, simulating real user traffic.
Proactive health checks.
Exactly. And potentially even policies around monetization if some of these interfaces offer significant external value that could be charged for.
And AI can help with this ongoing governance burden, too.
Yes, increasingly so. AI tools are emerging to assist with many of these governance tasks. They might be able to auto-generate comprehensive test suites for new API versions, just based on the OpenAPI or Async API specification.
Okay.
They could potentially suggest appropriate role-based access control rules by analyzing who is actually using which interfaces and for what purpose,
Interesting.
and maybe even flag subtle issues like schema drift, where the underlying data structure in the EDI system or the API definition changes slightly before it causes a major outage for downstream consuming applications. Managing the complexity of this hybrid EDI and API world requires constant vigilance, and AI can help automate a lot of that necessary oversight.
So let's pull it all together. You've mapped everything, you've layered on APIs using facades, you've added real-time events, you've used AI to automate messy document conversion and exception handling, you've strategically retired old connections based on data, and you've put robust, potentially AI-assisted governance in place. Why does this hybrid model, as David Heath describes it, ultimately win? What's the big picture takeaway?
Well, the core benefit, the real win, is that it directly addresses that fundamental conflict we started with the tension between stability and agility.
How so?
By keeping the legacy EDI components running where needed, you retain those essential compliance audit trails. Crucially, you maintain your connection to your entire network of trading partners, including the many who just aren't ready, or perhaps never will be, for APIs. You don't cut them off.
Right. You keep that broad reach. And by adding the AI-accelerated APIs and the event backbone,
You unlock all the modern benefits. You get the agility, the real-time responsiveness that businesses need today. You can actually achieve things like truly instant order status pings, or pushing inventory updates the moment they happen, sending proactive shipping delay notifications, sharing predictive ETAs for deliveries based on real-time data. Things EDI alone struggles with.
and critically, you achieve all of this without forcing your entire partner ecosystem to modernize overnight, and without taking on the terrifying risk and cost of a complete rip-and-replace project of your core EDI engine.
Exactly. That's the absolute key differentiator. The end state isn't necessarily the absence of EDI. It's what the article beautifully describes as a living, event-aware integration fabric.
A living fabric.
Yeah, it's a system that can evolve at the speed your business needs to compete in the modern world while still respecting and, frankly, leveraging the significant investment you've already made in those reliable, albeit traditional, EDI systems.
So it's a deliberate phased shift, moving from those slow, file-based batch exchanges towards participating in more dynamic, real-time ecosystems.
And doing it on your organization's own timetable, guided and increasingly automated by AI. It avoids the disruption while delivering the modern capabilities.
This phased approach, as detailed in David Heath's article, really does feel like a practical, achievable blueprint, especially for organizations feeling stuck between that rock of legacy EDI and the hard place of modern API demands. It's about smart evolution, not just blind replacement, with AI as a really powerful enabler throughout the process.
It acknowledges the commercial realities, the sunk costs, the partner networks, but provides a clear, manageable path towards a much more agile and responsive future.
It makes you think, though, considering how deeply embedded EDI is in global commerce and how this approach kind of breaks down the seemingly impossible task of modernizing it, it raises a bigger question for me. What other large-scale critical legacy systems, maybe in finance or healthcare or government systems that currently act as roadblocks to real-time interaction, could they also benefit from a similar strategy, this AI-accelerated hybrid modernization approach?
That's a great question.
What entirely new kinds of business interactions, what new efficiencies across any industry build on older technology could this kind of layered, intelligent evolution potentially unlock? Things we maybe haven't even fully imagined yet.